Pestilence is the first in a series of 4 dark romance novels by Australian author Laura Thalassa. It's about a woman who is captured by and falls in love with the first horseman of the apocalypse, Pestilence the Conqueror. Just in case the 5 or so of you who might click on this are fans of the series, I'm going to state up front that I found this book to be incredibly boring to read. I finished it in hopes that there would be some interesting tidbits, because I find the concept fun in theory, and I also love the earnestness of the Kindle covers. They're really cute. Anyway, I'm going to walk through the plot, such as it is, and chime in with my ideas of how to make the book more interesting. Just spitballing. Might be rich coming from me, because I've written exactly 0 books. But allow me to backseat edit a little bit. A deadly plague has swept the earth, dubbed Messianic Fever. That is admittedly a pretty cool name. No one knows where the 4 horsemen came from, only that one day they appeared on their steeds, riding through cities and wide lands alike. And as they passed through town after town, human technology broke like waves upon the rocks. No one knew what it meant, especially when, all at once, the 4 horsemen disappeared just as suddenly as they had appeared. Our electronics never recovered, but we began to rationalize the inexplicable events away. It was a solar flare, terrorists, synchronized EMP pulses. Forget that none of these explanations made any sense. They were more reasonable than some biblical apocalypse, so we cringed and swallowed down those half-baked theories. And then Pestilence reappeared. I am hoping in the series there's some sort of explanation as to why there's that 5-year gap after they showed up. I'm not gonna hold my breath, but I am curious as to why there is a 5-year gap in between the horsemen showing up and the plots of these books. It seems kind of nonsensical. Anyway, our female main character is Sarah Burns, and she's a firefighter in British Columbia. She and her co-workers draw matches to decide which of them is going to try and kill Pestilence as he rolls through town while the rest of their town evacuates and quarantines, I guess. For some reason, one of her buddies has a crush on her. This never comes up again. She just says that she thinks he likes her more than a friend. I don't know if that's just to prove that she's romantically desirable. It just seems like kind of a stupid detail. She's pretty sure she's going to die in the attempt. I was not convinced of that because it's the first 10 pages of a romance novel, but whatever. They hope that if they kill the horseman, the plague will stop. It'll cease. I liked that electronics don't work, or at least they were said to have not worked, because right after this she mentions seeing footage of Pestilence in New York in the past. I stare at Pestilence. This is no human anymore that his mount is a horse. The last footage I saw of him, he was storming through New York City, an arrow notched into his bow, firing into the retreating stampede of screaming people bent on fleeing him. I had to watch the newsreel 5 times before I believed it, and then I could watch no more. When I read through this, my charitable assumption was that she meant most technology stopped working. I don't know why TVs would be working if most of them crapped out. Kind of defeats the purpose of there not being any technology, especially if there's recordings, whatever. Anyway, this is just a prelude to Sarah camping out and finding the horseman and waiting to shoot him. When she spots him, he is, of course, gorgeous. He's almost too much to look at, too breathtaking, too noble, too ominous. I hadn't expected that. I hadn't expected to forget myself or my deadly task. I hadn't expected to feel moved by him, not with all this fear and hate churning in my stomach. But I am utterly overwhelmed by him, the first horseman of the apocalypse. She waffles a little because he looks so much like a regular person, so she doesn't want to shoot him. But she ultimately does shoot him with her gun. She wanders over to see if he's dead, and surprise, surprise, he is not. I barely have time to turn to the side before I retch. His breath is coming out in wet pants. He reaches for me. His fingers brush my boot. I jump back, letting out a cry and nearly falling on my ass. I didn't even realize how close I'd crept up to him. Need to end this. I race back to my gun on unsteady feet. But why did I leave it behind? Through my haze of panic, I can't remember which tree I left it at, and the horseman is still alive. I made fun of this to myself when I read it. Like, how did you lose your gun? But I would 100% drop the gun and forget where I put it. So I give up my search for the weapon and head back to the little camp I set up for myself. Among my things are matches and lighter fluid. My hands shake as I grab them. Mechanically, I head back. Are you really going to do this? I stare dumbly down at the items in my hand. He's still alive, and you're going to burn him while he breathes. You, a firefighter. Fire is no clean death. In fact, it's got to be one of the worst ways to go. I don't hate Pestilence nearly enough, because I can barely stand the thought of what I'm about to do. Cool that she burns him alive. Whack that she's like, I don't hate him enough to kill him. Like, girl, he's killing all of humanity. What do you mean? Get a grip. My biggest hope for this book was that there'd be some gross stuff, because Pestilence is always about disease, and that's nasty. So burning him alive, pretty sick. He screams until he can't. No one deserves to go like this. Not even a harbinger of the apocalypse. Girl, what are you talking about? Yes, he does. He's a harbinger of the apocalypse. He's killing innocents in droves. Buck up. Unfortunately, it turns out our boy Pestilence is actually immortal. Can't be killed. My favorite part about this is that for a chapter or two after, he's described as being charred with like bits missing from his face and his limbs. Like he pats her down for weapons, and his hand is just bones, which is gross. It's cool. He captures Sarah and vows to make her suffer for daring to kill him. Pretty weak shit coming from Pestilence the Conqueror, but whatever. He ties her up by her wrists and makes her run behind him on his horse for miles, at one point dragging her on the ground when she inevitably trips and falls. Of course, while all this is happening, while she's being tortured and drawn and quartered, she has time to notice his beautiful blonde hair. He's painfully beautiful, with his mournful blue eyes and his high, proud cheekbones, and the deadly set of his jaw. One of my hands twitches as I self-consciously try to tuck a lock of his sweaty brown hair behind my ear. Girl. I mean, I guess. Sure. Finally, they stop. They stop at a house, an abandoned house, and they take a bath. This is the first of many baths that happen in this book, baths and showers. I know it's just an excuse to have them naked in close proximity, but I do think it's funny. I don't know why, it made me laugh. The human embodiment of Pestilence has to take baths like a regular human being. That tickled me for some reason. It just seemed silly. He's still pissed off at her because when she was about to light him on fire, he was begging for mercy, which, like, yeah, I guess I'd be a little pissed too, but also, who cares? You're mowing down the entire population of North America. Like, I don't really care about you feeling angry at her. I don't know if we're supposed to yet, but it's just kind of whack coming from a guy who's supposed to be a conqueror. He's like mad she fought him in battle. Like, that's goofy. Maybe if the author had leaned into his characterization and made him sort of a pampered, like, royal douche, his sort of damaged ego about her almost killing him might make a little more sense. But he's pretty stoic and boring, so the whole him being mad thing doesn't really hit for me. Anyway, he watches her piss so she doesn't escape. A horseman of the apocalypse is watching me pee. Of all the sentences in the English language I could have come up with, that is not one I ever imagined thinking. I bite back a crazy laugh. I'm going to die, but not before my dignity is murdered first. They continue on. They pretty much, this entire book, go from nondescript house to nondescript house. Most of them are abandoned. Not all of them are. Sarah notices that she's like starving and she feels like shit, but she's not sick. So she realizes that he's probably preventing her from getting the plague. She is still horny for him, despite him having no discernible personality. Honestly, this guy's insufferable, even if he is annoyingly handsome. Actually, that might be what's making it worse. He's like the most aggressive form of my already most hated male combo, the hot asshole. At this point, we finally get a little background into Sarah. She wanted to go to college for English because she loves poetry, like Edgar Allan Poe, but decided that was too impractical in the apocalypse, so she became a firefighter instead, which is cool. I was really surprised when I opened the book and she was a firefighter. I appreciate that, but it's pretty insubstantial. Her firefighting doesn't really come up at all. It just sort of like is an offhanded thing that she mentions that she's a firefighter. But it doesn't really play a role in the plot or even in her personality. She, while they're writing and she's bored, she quotes poetry, which honestly, in this instance, reminds me of how when I would write papers in college, I'd start to get really loosey-goosey with the source quotes, like really long paragraphs from the source to like pad for time, for space. That's kind of how it feels when she starts quoting poetry. Just feels like she's trying to meet a word count. While they're stopped at another house to rest, she realizes that Pestilence isn't in the house with her. So she tries to run for it. But of course, Pestilence sees her running, hunts her down, and shoots her full of arrows. Then he goes back to dragging her behind his horse as punishment for her trying to escape. And while she's like full of arrows, unsurprisingly, she almost dies. But Pestilence decides he doesn't actually want to kill her. The nice guy.
I'm alive. It seems impossible in light of everything I went through. It felt as though I was being torn apart. Suffering is for the living, Pestilence replies from where he sits. I glance around the room we're in. It's another guest room, presumably in another house Pestilence has decided to invade.
He didn't let me die. He intends to let me heal. Only so that I can suffer more. Why am I here, I ask. I won't let you die. Again, I don't know whether him saving me is a kindness or a curse. It's obviously a curse, you dumb bimbo. He ain't saving you to romance your ass. You shot me, then tied me up and dragged me through the snow. Just saying those words forced a shiver through me. So we're not even 20% of the way through the book, and I'm already annoyed by the I'm keeping you alive to make you suffer shtick. Just kind of a bummer because it's like the only excuse the book has for why the horseman is keeping her around. That said, the fact that he actually physically does harm to her is pretty juicy, just from like a horror romance perspective. I know sometimes the horror, the violence and the horror can just like happen to the female main character, so I appreciate she's actually like going through it. Side note, he calls her human or little human a lot, and I know that makes the romantic-y girlies go crazy, but I feel like there has to be a better nickname to call her, especially since he looks human, he acts human, he kind of talks like a regular human, so it feels kind of silly. He's just a blonde guy. He uses mortal once or twice to refer to her, which I honestly prefer by a lot because I think it makes a little more sense in the context of like what he's supposed to be. Human just feels, I don't know, maybe it just sounds cliched in my head, like I've heard it too many times in like paranormal romance. Finally, some more gross stuff. She's regaining her strength, and she wanders around the house they're in, and she finds one of the residents is still alive. The news had mentioned the lumps, how they could swell and cover every inch of the body, and how, towards the final stages of the disease, they'd burst open like overripe fruit as the person's body decayed from the inside out. Pretty cool. Pretty disgusting. I was really hoping there would be more of that in this book, but there really is not. Sarah keeps this guy company as he slowly dies. She gives him a shot of whiskey, and she quotes Lord Byron at him. In case you forgot that we learned 15 pages ago, she's a hardcore lit bitch. She does the same sort of thing a number of times with other people whose homes they invade. I honestly don't know what the narrative purpose of these scenes are, other than to have her face the plague, so you don't forget that this is a book about a plague bringer. These scenes all kind of start to read the same, but I will give credit for the first few being like pretty substantially gross to read. After she recovers from him almost killing her, things start to get a little fluffy. By fluffy, I mean sort of like a marshmallow, like full of air, kind of light on the content. He watches her take a bath so she doesn't try to escape. You know, normally that'd be very sexy conceit, very, very titillating, because neither of them really have like a personality, so their relationship is just kind of rote. The like sexiness of the scene is totally lost on me. I did not give a shit that they were nude in an enclosed space. They have some inane conversations, like she asks him if he has a name, he says he doesn't have one. They also talk about what word they use for bathroom. Come, he says. He grabs a towel from the rack and throws it at me. I don't manage to catch it in time, and a good portion of it hits the water. I know you're finished bathing, he continues, oblivious to the black look I'm giving him, and I'm eager to leave this latrine. It's not a latrine, I say, standing and wrapping the towel around myself. It's a bathroom. He shakes his head as he opens the door. Bathroom. He splits the word into two parts. The irony of the term isn't lost on me. What do you mean? Only you humans would think it wise to put your privy next to your bathing vessels. Do you understand what I mean when I say these conversations are inane? I would probably be more charmed by the situations like this if the book had stuff happen in it. But this is kind of all that happens in the whole book. They ride on a horse. They stop to go to sleep. She recites Edgar Allan Poe to him. She tries to get him to eat human food. She names his horse Trixie Skills. Shit like that. You know, they go to a general store. They eat a piece of stale pie. She almost dies of hypothermia, and he gets mad she didn't tell him she was cold. Why didn't you say anything? Pestilence roars. Or maybe it's the wind and the rain that's roaring. I'm supposed to suffer. He huffs, and I swear I hear him say, not like this. But that's ridiculous because I'm supposed to suffer exactly like this. This dude is straight up stupid. He's keeping this girl as a pet and he doesn't know like they need like food and water and to be warm. Another side note, this is something of a trope in the dark romance I've read. The male main character ignores the female main character's obvious discomfort until she passes out and then gets upset at her for not saying something. If a man gets mad at you like this in real life, you should kick him in the balls. They end up in a house belonging to a family with children. Their being there slowly kills the entire family. You'd think that this is a very juicy and dramatic situation, but honestly, it's quite dull. These people are slowly dying, and in the protagonist's head, she's just being angry that the horseman is doing the plague. The wife of the family has enough time alive to tell her she thinks the horseman of the apocalypse has a crush on her. Why did he save you? She pressed. I tried to kill him, I explained. He's keeping me alive so that he can punish me. She shook her head. I don't think so, she murmured. He might have his reasons, but I don't think punishment is one of them. He's mostly been trying to kill her, so the fact that she's saying this is really funny. while this family is sprouting boils and dying. Sarah asks Pestilence why he's doing what he's doing. Why do you have to kill it all? I say as he leads me down the hall. Why do you have to ruin the world? The horseman retorts, I didn't. You did. Just as I don't have to touch each man to kill him. Nor did you have to personally light the world on fire to be the reason it burns. Okay, I think at this point in the book, the crux of the issue I'm having is that we don't really know why the horsemen are even here. The reader can fill in whatever reason for the apocalypse they want, but that feels lazy. Is it because of the destruction of the environment, the suffering humanity inflicts on itself? What are their marching orders? What is the reason the apocalypse has to happen? Because we don't know why this is happening. We don't know why the horseman is killing all these people. So his eventual conflict about killing people and making his girlfriend sad has no weight. What order is he disobeying to be with this woman? Because obviously he's going to stop at some point to get them to their happily ever after. I kept wishing we could learn more about the heavenly order in this universe. We just get the horseman saying, I have to kill humans because humans ruined everything, which means functionally nothing. It does nothing for the stakes. She even asks him who's giving him these commands, and he gags her to shut her up. Laura, I'm dying, please. Just a scrap of lore. Just a little scrap of lore, please. They finally reach Vancouver, so they've traveled basically all the way across Canada. Here they get ambushed. Pestilence tosses Sarah off the horse, kills a bunch of guys, then circles back to pick her up. As they're fleeing the scene, they start running on the surface of the bay. Most exciting thing to happen in 100 pages. But it turns out he got shot, is about to flop off the horse, so Sarah has to direct them back to shore. He has to take time to regenerate, so she just sits with him, like with his head in her lap. Normally I love nursing your love interest back to health trope, but in this instance, it just feels kind of silly because he's immortal. He's just going to regenerate. My thumb smooths over one of his annoyingly perfect eyebrows. Battered and broken like he is, my stupid heart actually aches for him. It's just because he's stupidly pretty, I tell myself. I run my knuckles over his brow. I'm sorry they did this to you, I admit, just as I'm sorry for everything he has done to them. It's a catch-22. I don't actually think that's what a catch-22 is. She has to drag him to a nearby house because he's unconscious. This brings me to the first popular highlight of note. She's taken his armor off so he's easier to drag. And she puts his crown on her head. After I put Pestilence's crown on my head, motherfucking queen right here. Which, I think this is a really stupid line, but I do think it's cute that the Kindle girlies liked it so much that they all highlighted it. He's already conscious again by the time she manages to get to the house, which makes me think she was dragging him for a very long time. He begins to push himself up, but I don't let him get very far. Grabbing his shoulder, I force him back down to the couch. I will heal on my own, he insists, scowling first at the gauze, then the liquor that rests on the nearby coffee table. Yeah, you will. So yeah, she is like patching him up, which it's the apocalypse. It seems like kind of a waste of resources to do this for a guy who's just going to regenerate. I don't know. I don't know if I would never be charmed by her doing something unnecessary like this, but in this situation, it just feels kind of silly because like in 10 pages, he's going to be fine. I sit down on the chair in front of him and unscrew the cap of the whiskey, my eyes trained on his wounds. I don't agree with this, he says, but he's no longer trying to flee. In fact, if I didn't know any better, I'd say that I see curiosity sparkling in Pestilence's eyes. He follows her into the bathroom when she takes a bath. That's bath count number 3. Like I said, lots of baths. This time she's got booze, though. Grabbing the bottle next to me, I hold it out like a peace offering. After a pause, where he's surely considering the wickedness of alcohol and how stained his soul is quickly becoming,
He takes the bottle from me, pouring himself another drink. He's heavy-handed, probably because he doesn't realize how potent this stuff is. He looks at the label afterwards. Johnny Walker Red Label, he reads. His eyes flick to me. Product placement. The next day, she needs new clothes, so she raids the house's closet. I managed to fish out an outfit from the closet in the master bedroom. By all appearances, the owners were an older, well-to-do couple. The man liked his khakis pressed and pleated, and the woman liked her clothes to drape and glitter. I'm practically swimming in the slinky black top I wear, and I've had to cinch the pair of studded purple jeans to within an inch of their life to keep them from sliding off. There's not a lot of description of clothing in this book, which is fine if it's not interesting or useful to the scene you're setting. Why bother? Because there's not many of them, when outfits do get mentioned, it always strikes me as odd. This particular outfit I had trouble picturing because it was so specific, and I feel like it has to be based on something the author's seen before. The house they're in has provisions, so she makes herself some pasta. They continue to get plastered on Johnny Walker Red Label. If Pestilence is disturbed by the fact that I stayed with him and tended his wounds, or tried to at least, then I'm most unnerved by the fact that he spared me from pain. You're no good to me dead, Sarah. Why is that? I asked, searching his face. Why am I alive here with you while your other attackers lie dead in the streets of Vancouver? His mouth tightens. Because I deem it so. Another pet peeve of mine is goofy dialogue. Obviously, it's a matter of taste, but this exchange really got me. The line she says, why am I alive and here with you while your other attackers lie dead in the streets of Vancouver? Like, just trying to say that line out loud kind of reveals how, needlessly clunky it is as a sentence. We finally get a crumb of lore because Pestilence is drunk and says that his brothers, the other horsemen, are somewhere on Earth asleep until it's their time. I sort of want to ask him where he managed to sleep for 5 years undetected. Why sleep at all? Why wait at all? There was a possibility, he trails off, lost in some thought. What possibility? I prod. He rouses himself. The possibility that humanity would redeem itself. He grabs his glass and swirls it. But alas, not even the end days could alter the depraved nature of your cursed kind. Unfortunately, after this, we're back to them pining for each other in the dullest way possible. It's just lots of, I feel something when I look at him, but I don't know what it is. I do, girl. Just blink and move on. They get really close, of course, because they're drunk and they're flirting. Just one taste, I reason. That's not so bad, right? Just one taste. No one could blame me for being curious. This horseman is supposedly God's justice and vengeance. How can I be doing anything wrong if I let his horseman touch me? Pestilence hesitates. Unlike me, I imagine he might be having one final moment to talk himself out of, rather into, this. In that one moment, I come to my senses. Please, I whisper. Spell's broken. Please? Pestilence pulls away and gives me a look of disgust. You say this to me now. I neglected to mention this earlier because it's just too stupid, but whenever Sarah says please, the horseman does the opposite. I guess it's because he begged her for mercy before she set him on fire, but it's functionally just a delaying tactic to prevent them from boinking right away. They continue acting awkward around one another. Then they take off on his horse and they run on the water again, which is a cool visual, but then Sarah immediately pukes and falls off the horse. Pestilence assumes she's throwing herself off the horse to kill herself in the water. You do not get to kill yourself, Pestilence all but roars, seawater dripping off his hair. He looks mad with anger. His eyes are so vividly blue. I rub my neck, my throat raw. I wasn't trying to, I say hoarsely, sitting up. Lies, he bellows. I saw you throw yourself from the horse. I needed to puke. That's all. I clear my throat, focusing on him. Why are you so concerned anyway? I ask, rising to stand on shaky legs. I squint at him. You made it pretty clear today that you don't care much about me. The horseman glares at me, his brow furrowed. Suffering is, my shoulders slump, for the living. Yeah, I know. He grabs my chin, forcing me to look at him. His eyes search mine, and they're raging with anger. All at once, he jerks my face forward and kisses me. Well, their first kiss. I will concede that this is pretty funny, that their first kiss is after she hangover pukes her pancakes into the ocean. They stop at a store to pick up some camping supplies. Very exciting, in case they can't find shelter. Pestilence takes time to break all of the hunting rifles on the wall. I know this is to make him sympathetic, but again, it feels really stupid coming from a guy who is, throughout this entire book, killing everyone with his pigpen plague cloud. We get some lore about the capital G God in this universe while they're hanging out in their little campsite. God isn't a man or woman. He's something else entirely. Then why do you keep using male pronouns? I ask. Because you do. I give him a quizzical look. How do I know English, he says, or wield a bow and arrow? Why do I wear breeches and a breastplate and look like a human? I, like God, have been fashioned into something you can understand. But this is, he gestures to his body, is not what I really am. It's not? Having trouble with this one. I am Pestilence, Sarah, he says softly. Not a man. I have a body and a voice and a sentience not for my own benefit, but for yours. So, God isn't a man. You seem surprised. I shift uncomfortably. I'm not surprised, it's just... I don't know, I say. I prod at the fire with the stick I still hold. Is he or she or it even Christian? The four horsemen, after all, were mentioned in the Bible. Pestilence gives me a disparaging look. You humans and your hang-ups with names and labels. God isn't Christian, just as he isn't Jewish or Muslim or Buddhist or any other denomination. God is God. An answer that will appease pretty much no one. I don't expect a romance novel on Kindle Unlimited to tell me which religion it thinks is correct. But when I was begging for lore, I was imagining some sort of like angelic hierarchy, especially if you're writing about real religions. I think you can get away with the suggestion of things behind the scenes without concrete answers. Anyway, they make out, and he asks if this emotion he's feeling is love, and she says, no, it's lust. So he storms off, and he's all mad, and she can't sleep, of course, because they fought. And then he comes back, and she's all cold, so they snuggle. The reason I'm listing the back and forth here is it feels as redundant as it sounds. Like there's not even 2 pages between these 2 scenes. He didn't need to storm off just to come back 1 page later. This is something I've noticed in romance novels, at least on Kindle Unlimited anyway. They read like fan fiction. And not that this is fan fiction with serial numbers filed off, but like the author is padding for time. It's common in fan fiction to have like a chapter update that's maybe a few pages long with where nothing really happens. It's just providing some space between sexy set pieces. I think it's an attempt at pacing, but because nothing really happens, the author just appears to be moving their Barbie dolls around the scene, and it's pretty boring. They depart the next day, having not yet blinked, and Sarah starts quoting literature again, reciting The Raven, and the famous Hamlet soliloquy, to be or not to be, in case you forgot she's a book girl. They do another home invasion. The tenants are still alive, and not at all pleased. They tell Pestilence to get out and take his horror with him. It is one thing for you to insult me, Pestilence growls, ignoring the woman altogether. Another for you to insult her. He jerks his head my way. One will earn you my ire, the other a painful death. He squeezes the man's neck tight enough to hear him choke. Do you understand? Why do you have to invade people's homes? I ask. I know even as I say that the horseman doesn't do this because he wants to. He does this because I'm the one who needs food and rest. It's me he dotes on. even at the expense of his victims. All the world is mine, Pestilence says, even this ogre's house. Because this is billed as a dark romance, I'm not bothered by him being an asshole. I think it's fine that he's a dick to people, but I think he could have done more conquering throughout the book. He just randomly starts acting like an asshole to remind us he's supposed to be a bad guy, but most of what he's been doing is just showing up at people's houses and then leaving while they die of plague. He's not really actually been doing physically any harm to them. I think part of the problem with Pestilence as like a character is that his plague bringing is passive. Like maybe if he had to do something to spread the plague, he wouldn't feel as disconnected from his like evilness, from the deeds that he's doing. People just sort of get plague around him. I wish he at least had like a horde of pests or something cool like that. I really was hoping we would see some pests, like rats or toads or locusts, pretty much anything. After this, Sarah gives him the cold shoulder because they're invading these people's homes and they're all gonna die, and she's like not in the mood to make out. The wife who lives at this house also wants to talk to her about her relationship with Pestilence, and she's trying to tease out if there's anything she can do to save her family, and honestly, this is just to make Sarah feel guilty for wanting to boink this guy. And then the husband comes in to call her a whore again. That night, he wakes her up and holds her at gunpoint to kill her for revenge because his family's dying. What do you possibly hope to accomplish by killing me? I ask, stepping past the first of the evergreen trees that border the property. Vengeance for my family. I raise my eyebrows even though he can't see the action. I know the horseman likes kissing me, but I doubt my death would shake him at all that much. Surprise, surprise, Pestilence shows up right after this and pulps the guy. This might have been more tense if Pestilence hadn't said 5 chapters back that he's in love with her while he thought she was asleep. She's acting like he doesn't love her because he's doing his job, but he's like pretty much doing everything but saying he's in love with her, so she's just getting on my nerves. Then they do some more bonding at this dying family's house. She asks him to recall a memory, and he's like, they'd scare you. What do you want to know? Shall I tell you about man's first cities? I remember stirring awake, my attention caught on their attempts to elevate themselves from other creatures. I watched them build crude houses and tame wild beasts. I admit I was awestruck at the sight of man molding nature into something pleasing, something he could use. Then came towns and cities, kings and law. The world moved faster as man built and created and innovated and conquered. I was there for all of it, and I've been here ever since. I've stood in ancient bazaars, I've walked through city centers, I've lingered in castles and alleyways and everything in between. I've stayed in 1,000 different houses, and I've kissed the brow of countless humans, and I've lain with each one. I came to earth, and I touched, and the world knew terror. Cool. The most he's talked this whole book. Again, I feel like if she wanted to keep this little speech and have it be impactful, you have to bring it back to something. So I feel like it would make more sense to take even this monologue and incorporate plagues that have existed in the world, because we've had quite a few, bringing it back to the plagues and not so much the conquering. I have to do another sidebar. Pestilence is called the Conqueror because in earlier iterations or in some translations of the Bible, the first horseman is a conqueror. Pestilence is just sort of like a part of the apocalypse. So he sort of became the avatar of Pestilence at some point. It is interesting to think about him being a conqueror because if you perhaps went to school in the United States, you might have learned that when white people came to America, we brought with us all of our European diseases, and that was a big part of why the native people were genocided. We just brought our germs with us. So, incorporating real world
pestilence at the very least. Plague, how many times have populations given each other plague? How many times have people sought to take a land and in being there killed it? Like there are ways to draw all of this back to some sort of consistent characterization or lore of the pestilence character, but because he just sort of passively gives people plague and that's like his whole deal, he just is kind of like a nothing burger as a horseman. He doesn't really seem to be doing anything or know how to do anything. He just wanders around the United States and Canada with this girl on his horse. Sidebar over, I'm gay and I like mythology, and so when mythology isn't taken full advantage of, I get ticked. Next house, he takes a shower, of course. It's not going to count the bath count, but it should. The horseman's wet hair drips between us, and rivulets of water cut down his chest. I feel a rush of heat at the sight of his bare skin. The firelight caresses every dip and curve, and not for the first time I notice the exquisiteness of his form. His high cheekbones and his full lips look all the more extreme as shadows dance along them, and then there's the rest of him, which is all so distinctly male, from his sculpted, powerful shoulders to his thick, cut biceps. I do think when people refer to something as being particularly male or distinctly male, I'm like, that is not a descriptor. That's really, like, you can find another word that isn't male. We know he's a man. His pecs are on the cover. Let's find a different word. In this house, Sarah finds out that there are wanted posters being passed around with drawings of her and Pestilence on them, and they're identifying her as a potential agent of the Horsemen, which I like. I like the idea of her feeling like a traitor to humankind, just from a drama standpoint, but it's not really used to full dramatic effect. She just kind of mopes around about it. Honestly, I think she shouldn't have given up trying to kill him so soon. I know it's like, oh, he can't be killed, but I don't know. I would try one more again if you're not sure. I know she's being tortured, but like from a drama standpoint, that's really boring. Just watching her be tortured the entire book is like it's not exciting. It's just really dull. Anyway, finally they're back in America and we're all violent, so we can get some action. But first, they stay at this elderly couple's house. And they kind of invite them in. They're not bitter about them being there because they're already old and they've had a good life. The wife, of course, it's time to tell Sarah that it's okay to be in love with the human embodiment of Pestilence. Of course, as one does. They let the two stay with them. They feed them. They give them a place to sleep. Pestilence comes into the room Sarah's staying in when he thinks she's asleep and does like a whole speech about how in love he is. He's just talking at her while she's pretending to sleep.
I admit, he continues, I have no idea what's come over me. Never in my long existence have I felt this way. Not until I came to your world, and in this form could I feel.
And before I met you, even that was limited to the vitriol that burned thick in my belly. All I once wanted was to raze civilization to the ground. It was not until I met you, hated though you were, that I understood the meaning of God's words, of mercy. He says this as though it's of paramount importance. And now I understand why there is hope yet for your kind, because along with the bad, there is this. And I cannot figure out what this is, he continues, only that I feel it when I see you and when I think of you. When we ride together and I hold you, I feel as though all is right. And when you laugh, I think I might truly die. This is an agonizing sort of pleasure, and it's ever so perplexing. I don't understand how pain and affection can coexist around one another. He keeps going. It's like multiple paragraphs long. I'm not going to read the entire thing. Because he's officially in love with her, by his own admission. They both take care of the elderly couple as they die of plague. Aw. And then, as a treat, they take another bath. This time they take it together. Great. Cute. It's really pretty boring. Kind of horny, but, it's I don't care about these people, so it didn't do anything for me. Another house. They leave. They bury the old people, and they go to another house. More inane chit-chat. Pestilence tells Sarah she's his favorite person, like we're watching Love is Blind. But this is more than just some crush. There's no pretending otherwise. I like the way Pestilence talks, the way he thinks. He thinks I win. Finally, they fuck. Honestly, I was impressed. It took until 70% through the book for them to boink. I would normally respect the slow burn, but since everything happening up to this point was so boring, I was mostly just happy that the book was almost over at this point. Okay, so they're boinking. He starts out slow, savoring each stroke of his hips, like I do good chocolate. But like good chocolate, the savoring gives way to indulgence. I do not understand what this is describing. Predictably, he asks her to marry him right after they boink for the first time. She's confused that the mythical horseman doesn't do casual sex. I'm confused why she thought that might be the case. He wears armor and rides a horse. Why would he be into hookups? Finally, they're out and about again, and Pestilence gets shot. Some people ambushed him, and they try to rescue Sarah because they understandably think she's his captive. I'm nearly to the double doors when Handlebar Mustache calls out to me, "Why have you forsaken your own people for that thing?" He has the audacity to ask the question while standing in a church. I turn back to face the man, my gaze sweeping over the rest of the wide-eyed men and women that watch me. "I haven't forsaken you," I say. "God has." Credit where it's due. That line's pretty cool. Immediately done thinking she's cool, though, because she rescues him again, even though he's immortal and would literally be fine. Then she cries about it. Of course, they get to safety and they boink again. He admits that she's not his prisoner anymore. Following up this thrilling conversation is a guy on the road offering Pestilence some random women as wives so that he'll spare their group from the plague. This lasts about 4 Kindle pages, never comes up again. Don't even know what purpose it served. She gets jealous for like 0.2 seconds, even though he's like, ew, gross. You're gonna die, sorry, can't help you. Blessedly, their next batch of stupid small talk is interrupted by an explosion. Some more resistance fighters blow Pestilence up and try to crucify him. I've noticed in these Kindle type books, it's clear when the author knows the reader should be in a scene longer for impact. In this scene, they're essentially torturing her by making her watch Pestilence get strung up. But instead of learning about the setting, what the place smells like, what the people there look like, we get Sarah saying, "This is awful, this is terrible," in her head a whole bunch. Let us sit in the scene for a while. Let us be uncomfortable without this endless narration. It'll hit harder when the scene finally ends, if we have a little bit of dread built up. Finally, Sarah gets fucking shot. Honestly, I was surprised she hadn't gotten shot sooner. She starts to die and begins to recite Humpty Dumpty in her head. All the king's horses, all the king's men. Girl, okay. While she's half dead, she meets Death, the guy who'll be the male main character in the final book in the series. He brings her back to life because his brother, Pestilence, is so sweet on her. What a nice brother. When she wakes up, she's in a hospital. She wanders out of her room, as she's wont to do, and she sees that the whole place is full of dead, bloated corpses. Pretty gnarly. Of course, Pestilence shows up with his horse in the hospital. Because people shot her, Pestilence has gone full scorched earth and decided humanity is no longer worth saving, even though he hasn't been saving them this entire time. Another day goes by, another McMansion invaded. They're settled in this abandoned mansion. The television in the living room is on, and Pestilence is standing in front of it, his arms folded, staring at the screen grimly. I glance at the TV, just to see what has tied up his attention. Breaking news: virulent outbreak of messianic fever along the West Coast and Pacific Northwest, spreading into Mexico. State and local governments are rapidly trying to quarantine infected areas. No known sighting of the horseman yet. Please stay in your homes and avoid city centers. I repeat, please stay in your homes and avoid city centers. To all those affected, our prayers and thoughts are with you. Be honest with me, Laura. Is some technology still working in this world just so you can have Pestilence stand in front of the TV like a dad pretending he's not interested in watching the Twilight movies with you? It's a funny image, but it's really not worth the logical inconsistencies, in my opinion. According to the news, he's taken out most of the West Coast. So Sarah starts shaking and crying and begging him to stop. He says no because he hates people for shooting her, even though she's literally fine and alive. She tries to leave, but because she's too weak from almost dying, he keeps her locked in the master bedroom for like a week or so. And then when he finally lets her out, he lets her leave. If you're like me, at this point in the book, we're about 90% through, and you're wondering, how are we going to wrap this up? Pestilence has wiped out a third of the population of North America, at least, and this chick is still in love with him. How are we going to turn this truck around so we can get to that sweet, sweet happily ever after? Prepare to be annoyed. Sarah somehow gets her ass back to the Canadian border in a few weeks, and it is only then that she finds out that the horseman has vanished. She was under the assumption everyone was dead and dying, but some guy at a general store says, nope, everyone's all better. The horseman vanished. So she's like, he really loves me. He stopped killing everyone. Too bad I'm never seeing him again. Back home, she gets to reunite with her family and her friends who'd gone into hiding. She's back in her apartment. She's drinking some homebrewed wine. She's reading her Lord Byron. And who knocks at the door? You're gonna shit. Pestilence. Wow. But he's not in armor. He's wearing a flannel and boots. The only outfit a male romantic lead is allowed to wear. They boink. He proposes with a ring made of his armor. She says yes, but asks him to pick a name so she can call him something that won't blow his cover as the guy who killed all those people. He chooses Victor. Wow. Victor, not Conqueror. So that's it. That's Pestilence. If I were to sum it all up, I'd say the Goodreads reviews are right in that this book was very boring. I don't think it had to be, though. I know asking for the female main character to have more of a personality is a bit of an ask. As romantic protagonists, they operate as a blank slate. But her firefighting could have come into play. She could have tried to kill him more. She could have had more to do other than just be captive. And I don't really count caring for those sick people because it was boring. That's about it. She can be nice and kind and care for the sick, but I need her to do other things other than that because I did not give a shit about her and her happily ever after because she had no discernible personality. Pestilence himself could have had more going for him. Sarah's a self-identified hardcore lit bitch. Maybe he could be a sort of Byronic hero, make him more moody or poetic, or have him spout old-timey sounding bullshit all the time. It didn't even need to be accurate. You could play with the character voice. Like at the beginning of the book, he could speak using thee and thou until being around Sarah for long enough, he changes the way he speaks. Even if the actual events of the book didn't change, I think some extra attention to character and the world that they're in could have made it much less of a slog. In the end, I definitely like the concept of this book way more than the execution. I've started the next book in the series, War, which is already pissing me off in a different way, so hopefully it will not be nearly as dull. Thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, let me know what you think. If you've read this book, if you like it or if you don't. I love Booktube breakdowns and rants, so I'm excited to try and make some of my own. So, yeah, okay. Love you. Bye.